The medical room on the Coalition ship Distant Star was quiet, except for the soft beeping of machines. Commander Vekrath lay on the medical bed, his gray fur dirty with old blood and medical gel. He looked like a giant wolf, but he was from a race called the Lunari. His eyes were amber-colored, and they glowed softly even though he was very weak. Vekrath was 300 years old. That was ancient for his people. His body had been broken and fixed so many times that the doctors had lost count. 3 moons were tattooed on his shoulder. Those marks told everyone that he had fought in the old sector wars, battles that happened long before humans ever joined the Space Alliance. Dr. Kyle Bennett stood next to the bed. He was only 28 years old, young compared to most doctors on the ship. He had short brown hair and tired eyes. For the past 6 hours he had been studying the aliens' medical charts on his tablet. Nothing made sense. According to all the data, there was nothing left to do. The commander was dying, and that was that. A clicking sound came from behind Kyle. He turned to see Medical Officer Threnix walking toward him. She looked like a giant praying mantis with green armor plating and forearms. Her species was called the Chirruk, and she was the head doctor on the ship. "The Elder has made his choice, human," Threnix said. Her voice came through a translator device that turned her clicking sounds into words. "It is the Lunari way. When a warrior cannot fight anymore, he accepts death with honor. You must understand this." Kyle shook his head. His hands gripped the tablet tighter. "There has to be something we can do. We can't just give up on him." "Give up?" Threnix moved closer, her large eyes reflecting the light. "We have done everything. His body is shutting down. His cells will not regenerate anymore. This is nature, Dr. Bennett. Even our advanced medicine cannot stop it." "Then we try something different," Kyle said. His voice was firm but not loud. "Human medicine might be simple compared to yours, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe simple is what we need right now." A deep rumbling sound filled the room. Vekrath had opened his eyes. He was looking at Kyle with interest. When he spoke, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together, but there was kindness in it. "Young human," Vekrath said slowly. "Your species has been in space for only 30 years. You know very little about the galaxy. Why do you think you can save me when doctors with centuries of experience say it cannot be done?" Kyle walked closer to the bed. He looked directly into those amber eyes without fear. "Because giving up isn't in my nature, sir. I became a doctor to save lives, not to watch people die when there might still be a chance." Vekrath made that rumbling sound again. It took Kyle a moment to realize the old warrior was laughing. "I have heard stories about humans. They say your people are stubborn beyond reason. They say you brought a dead soldier back to life once using only your hands and electricity. Is this true?" "CPR and defibrillation," Kyle said with a small smile. "Yeah, we do that. It doesn't always work, but when it does, it's worth trying." The old Lunari closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they seemed sadder. "I have lived for 300 cycles. I have fought in 73 wars. I have killed enemies and saved friends. I've watched everyone I loved die. My mate is gone. My children are gone. My pack is scattered to dust. I'm the last one left who remembers the old songs of my people. Tell me, young healer, what reason do I have to continue?" Kyle pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. He thought carefully about his answer. "Maybe the reason is that someone needs to teach those songs to the next generation. If you die, they die with you. That's a kind of death that lasts forever." Vekrath stared at him for a long time. The room was silent except for the beeping machines. Threnix stood nearby, watching them both with her insect eyes. "You are either very wise or very foolish," Vekrath finally said. "I have not decided which. But tell me, if you think you can help me, what would you do? What miracle do humans possess that the Coalition does not?" Kyle opened his tablet and pulled up some files. About 50 years ago, human scientists figured out how to extend life by working with something called telomeres. They're like little caps on the end of our DNA strands. When they get too short, our cells stop dividing and we age. We learned how to make them longer again. Threnix clicked her mandibles together. That meant she was interested but skeptical. "Human genetic science is primitive. You are suggesting this could work on Lunari physiology. That is a dangerous assumption." "I spent all night comparing Lunari DNA to Earth canines," Kyle said. He swiped through several charts on his tablet. "The base structure is similar enough that I think the treatment could work. But I'd need to modify it, and I'd need the commander's permission to try." "And if it fails?" Vekrath asked. His voice was steady, showing no fear. "Then you die a few days earlier than you would have anyway. Kyle answered honestly. But if it works, you could gain years, maybe decades. Time enough to teach those songs. Time enough to pass on everything you know. The old warrior looked at the ceiling of the medical room. The lights above made soft patterns on his gray fur. He was quiet for so long that Kyle thought he had fallen asleep. But then Veckrath spoke again. I have faced death many times in battle. I have charged into gunfire. I have fought enemies twice my size. I have led soldiers into situations where survival seemed impossible. But this is different. This is choosing to hope when hope seems foolish. He turned his head to look at Kyle again. Why do you care so much, human? You do not know me. I am not your species. I could die on your table and it would not be your fault. So why risk your reputation on an old wolf who is ready to die? Kyle thought about all the reasons. He thought about the oath he took when he became a doctor. He thought about the patients he had lost and the ones he had saved. He thought about what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of older, wiser species. Because every life matters, Kyle said simply. That's what humans believe. We're new to space, yeah. We don't have your technology or your experience, but we have something else. We have hope even when it seems stupid, especially when it seems stupid. And I look at you and I see someone worth saving, not just because you're a warrior or because you have knowledge, but because you're a person who deserves a chance to keep living. Veckrath's ears moved forward. That was a Lunari sign of respect. You humans are strange creatures. The galaxy has never seen anything quite like you. He took a deep breath, then let it out slowly. Very well, Dr. Bennett. I will accept your treatment, but I have one condition. Name it, Kyle said. If I survive this, you will sit with me and explain why your species is so magnificently insane. I want to understand what makes humans charge forward when every other species would retreat. Deal. Kyle stood up and extended his hand. After a moment, Veckrath raised his large paw and they shook. The old warrior's grip was still strong despite his condition. Deal, Kyle said with a grin. Threnix made a sound that the translator interpreted as a sigh. I will prepare the medical bay for the procedure, but I must say this is highly irregular. The captain will need to approve this. Then let's go talk to the captain, Kyle said. He felt energy flowing through him now. He had a purpose. He had a patient who was willing to fight, and he had a chance even if it was a small one. As they left the recovery room, Veckrath called out one more time. Dr. Bennett, thank you for being foolish enough to care. Kyle looked back and smiled. That's what we humans do best, Commander. We care when it doesn't make sense. And sometimes that makes all the difference. The door closed behind them, leaving Veckrath alone with his thoughts and the quiet beeping of the machines. For the first time in many years, the old warrior felt something he thought he had lost forever. He felt hope. It was a strange feeling, uncomfortable and unfamiliar, but it was also good. Maybe, just maybe, this young human could work a miracle. And if he did, then Veckrath would have time to teach the old songs one more time. Time to pass on the wisdom of his years. Time to ensure that his people's history did not die with him. The old wolf closed his eyes and waited. Whatever came next, he would face it with courage. That was the warrior's way. But now, thanks to one stubborn human doctor, he would face it with hope as well. Captain Corvin stood in the middle of the medical bay with several of his arms crossed. He was a crystalline being, made of what looked like living glass. Lights pulsed through his body in different colors, and Kyle had learned that these colors showed his emotions. Right now, the colors were shifting between red and orange, which meant he was concerned and maybe a little angry. Dr. Bennett, the captain said, his voice coming through speakers since he had no mouth. What you are suggesting breaks 3 different coalition medical laws. You want to experiment on a dying patient using untested human medicine. Do you understand how serious this is? Kyle stood straight and held his tablet firmly. Next to him was Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, the ship's human tactical officer. She had short black hair and a scar on her left cheek from a battle 6 months ago. She had served alongside Veckrath during the frontier incursion, and she was not going to let the old warrior die without a fight. Captain, I understand your concerns, Kyle said, but please look at these charts. I've spent the last 12 hours studying Lunari biology. Their regeneration system works through genetic markers that degrade over time. Human medicine discovered how to fix similar problems 50 years ago. The treatment is not experimental for humans. We use it all the time on Earth. Earth medicine, Threnix said from her position near the wall, which is designed for humans. The Lunari are not humans, Dr. Bennett. The differences in biology could make your treatment useless or even dangerous. Amy stepped forward. Medical Officer Threnix, with respect, the commander is going to die anyway. Kyle is offering a chance. Even a small chance is better than no chance at all. Corvin's colors shifted to purple, which Kyle thought might mean he was thinking hard. The law exists for a reason. We cannot simply ignore patient rights and medical ethics because we wish to help. Commander Veckrath has chosen to accept his death. That is his right as a Lunari elder. Then we ask him again, Kyle said. We explain exactly what I want to do, the risks and the benefits, and we let him choose. If he says no, then I'll respect that. But if he says yes, then we should let him make that choice for himself. The captain was quiet for a long moment. His crystalline body pulsed with different colors, cycling through the spectrum as he considered the options. Finally he spoke. Very well. I will allow you to present your plan to Commander Veckrath, but he must give clear consent. He must understand everything. And Dr. Bennett, if this treatment fails and causes him suffering, you will answer for it. Do you accept this responsibility? Kyle nodded without hesitation. I do, sir. Then go. Speak with him. I will wait for his decision. Kyle and Amy walked quickly through the corridors of the ship. Other crew members watched them pass. Word had spread about what the human doctor wanted to try. Some looked curious. Others looked worried. One alien crew member, a being covered in blue fur, made a gesture that Kyle thought was probably the equivalent of wishing him good luck. You really think this will work? Amy asked quietly as they walked. Kyle glanced at her. Honestly? I think it has maybe a 60% chance of success, but 60% is a lot better than 0%. That's not very confident. No, Kyle agreed, but it's honest, and Veckrath deserves honesty. They reached the recovery room where the old warrior was resting. Kyle knocked on the doorframe even though it was open. Veckrath's ears swiveled toward the sound and his amber eyes opened. The young healer returns, Veckrath said. His voice was weaker than before. Have you come to tell me your captain said no? Actually, he said it's your choice, Kyle replied. He and Amy entered the room and Kyle pulled up 2 chairs. I need to explain exactly what I want to do and what the risks are. Then you decide. Veckrath shifted slightly on the bed. I am listening. Kyle spent the next 20 minutes explaining the treatment in detail. He showed charts and diagrams on his tablet. He explained what telomeres were and how they worked. He talked about the success rate in humans and the possible complications for Lunari physiology. He did not hide anything. Every risk, every uncertainty, every possibility of pain or failure was laid out clearly. When he finished, Veckrath was quiet for a while. Then the old warrior spoke. You give me a 60% chance of survival. That means 4 times out of 10 I will die in pain, possibly suffering more than if I simply let nature take its course. Why would I choose this? Amy leaned forward. Sir, may I speak? Veckrath gestured with one paw. Of course, young soldier. 3 years ago I was stationed at Frontier Station 12 when the Skrull attacked. Do you remember that battle, sir? The old warrior's eyes focused on her. I remember. It was a hard fight. You saved my life that day, Amy said. Her voice was strong, but there was emotion in it. When the enemy broke through our lines, I was in the medical bay with 17 other wounded soldiers. The Skrull were coming to kill us all. You held that doorway for 3 hours by yourself until reinforcements arrived. 3 hours, sir. You took 14 wounds and you never stopped fighting. She stood up and met his eyes directly. You gave us a chance when we had none. Now Kyle is trying to give you a chance. I know the risks. I know it might not work. But I'm asking you as someone who owes you her life to try. Please try. Veckrath looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Kyle. You are both very young. The galaxy has not yet taught you that some fights cannot be won. Maybe, Kyle said. But humans are slow learners. We keep fighting even when we should quit. It's one of our worst qualities and one of our best. The old warrior made that rumbling laugh sound again. I notice you do not promise me success. You do not tell me everything will be fine. Other doctors would lie to make me feel better. Why do you not lie? Because you're a warrior, Kyle said simply. Warriors deserve the truth. They deserve to know the odds before they go into battle. This is a battle, Commander. It's a battle against your own biology. And I can't promise we'll win, but I can promise I'll fight with everything I have. Veckrath closed his eyes. He was quiet for so long that Kyle began to worry he had fallen asleep again. But then the old Lunari spoke, and his voice carried a weight of deep emotion. 300 years ago, I was young and full of fire. I thought I would live forever. I watched my pack grow old while I stayed strong. I watched them die one by one. My mate died holding my paw, asking me to remember her. My children died in battles far from home. My friends faded away like smoke. I am the last one left, and I have been alone for so very long. He opened his eyes, and there was moisture in them. Tears. I chose to die because I was tired of being alone. Tired of remembering things no one else remembers. Tired of singing songs that no one else knows. But you make me wonder if perhaps my tiredness is selfishness. Perhaps the young ones need those songs. Perhaps my knowledge has value I did not see. Veckrath looked at Kyle with those ancient amber eyes. You risk your reputation and your standing to save someone you do not know. You offer me hope when I had accepted despair. Very well, human. I accept your treatment. But know this, if I survive, I will spend my remaining years teaching the young. I will pass on everything I know. That will be my purpose. Kyle felt relief wash through him. That's all I could ask for, Commander. And if I die on your table, then I'll honor your memory by never giving up on another patient. I'll keep fighting impossible battles because that's what you deserve. The old warrior extended his paw. Kyle shook it firmly. You are a good person, Dr. Bennett. Your species is lucky to have you. I'm just doing my job, sir. No, Veckrath said seriously. You are doing more than your job. You are doing what is right even when it is hard. That is rare in any species. Amy wiped at her eyes quickly. Kyle pretended not to notice. They stood up and Kyle picked up his tablet. I need to prepare the medical bay, he said. The procedure will take several hours. Threnix will be assisting me. We'll do everything we can to make this work. I know you will, Veckrath said.
And doctor?
Thank you. Not for the treatment, but for caring. In all my years, I have met many healers. Most see patients as problems to solve. You see people as worth saving. That is a gift. Kyle felt his throat tighten with emotion. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak, and walked toward the door. Amy followed him. As they left the room, Amy put a hand on his shoulder. You can do this, Kyle. I believe in you. I hope your belief is enough, Kyle said quietly. Because I'm scared, Amy. What if I'm wrong? What if I kill him? Then he dies knowing someone cared enough to try, she replied. That's more than he had this morning. Now stop worrying and start preparing. You've got work to do. Kyle took a deep breath and nodded. She was right. Fear was normal, but it could not stop him. He had a patient who trusted him. He had a procedure to perform, and he had a chance to save a life that everyone else had given up on. They walked back to the main medical bay where Threnix was already setting up equipment. The insect doctor looked at them with her large, multifaceted eyes. He agreed? She asked. He agreed, Kyle confirmed. Then we have much work to do, Threnix said. I still believe this is dangerous and possibly foolish. But I will help you because that is my duty as a healer. And perhaps, Dr. Bennett, because your human stubbornness is somewhat contagious. Kyle smiled despite his nervousness. Thank you, Threnix. I couldn't do this without you. No, you could not, she agreed bluntly. The medical bay looked different now. Kyle had combined human medical equipment with coalition technology, creating a strange mix of familiar and alien. Monitors from Earth sat next to holographic displays from a dozen different worlds. The room hummed with energy and the smell of sterilization chemicals filled the air. Veckrath was brought in on a floating medical bed. He was sedated but not fully asleep yet. His amber eyes tracked Kyle's movements as the young doctor made final preparations. Threnix moved around the room with practiced efficiency, her forearms checking equipment and adjusting settings. Amy stood near the wall in clean medical clothing. She was not a doctor, but Kyle had asked her to be there. He needed someone he trusted nearby, someone who would keep him calm if things went wrong. Commander, can you hear me? Kyle asked, leaning close to the bed. I hear you, young healer, Veckrath rumbled. His voice was slower now, affected by the pre-surgery medication. In a few moments, you'll go to sleep completely. When you wake up, this will all be over. One way or another. Do you have any questions? The old warrior's mouth moved in what might have been a smile. Just one. If I die, will you sing one of the old songs at my funeral? It would please me to know that a human learned one, even if he cannot sing it well. Kyle felt his chest tighten. I'll learn every song if you teach them to me. But you're not going to die. Not today. Such confidence, Veckrath said softly. Very well. I will hold you to that promise, Dr. Bennett. Do your work. I trust you. Kyle nodded to Threnix, who injected the final sedative. Within seconds, Vecrath's eyes closed and his breathing became deep and steady. The monitors showed he was fully unconscious now. "Beginning procedure," Kyle announced. He looked up at the observation window above them. Captain Corvin was there, along with several senior officers. They had come to witness this moment, whatever the outcome might be. Kyle picked up the molecular injector, a device that looked like a large syringe but worked on quantum principles he barely understood. Inside it was the genetic treatment he had spent all night preparing. Blue liquid that glowed faintly with its own light. The treatment must be delivered directly into the heart of hearts, Threnix reminded him. That is the organ that controls Lunari regeneration, but it is protected by dense bone. You cannot reach it with conventional injection. That's why we're using this, Kyle said, holding up the injector. The Coalition's molecular phasing technology. It can pass through solid matter if calibrated correctly. You helped me set the calibration for Lunari bone density. Yes, Threnix agreed, but theory and practice are different things. If the calibration is wrong by even a small amount, the injection will fail or worse, damage the organ itself. Then let's make sure it's right, Kyle said. He activated the injector and watched as the holographic display showed a three-dimensional map of Vecrath's internal structure. He could see every organ, every bone, every blood vessel. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The heart of hearts was located deep in the chest, surrounded by protective bone plates that had evolved over millions of years. It pulsed with its own rhythm, separate from the main heart. This organ regulated cellular regeneration throughout the Lunari body. If Kyle could deliver the treatment here, it would spread to every cell. "Guide me," Kyle said to Threnix. "Your knowledge of Lunari anatomy is better than mine." The insect doctor moved closer, studying the hologram. The approach should be from the left side, between the third and fourth rib plates. The bone is thinner there. Angle the injector at 43 degrees, go slowly. If you feel any resistance, stop immediately. Kyle positioned the injector carefully. His hands were steady despite his nervousness. Years of training had taught him to control his fear during procedures. He took a deep breath and began. The injector hummed as it activated the molecular phasing. Kyle watched the holographic display as the tip of the device began to pass through fur, then skin, then muscle tissue. Everything was going according to plan. Passing through the first muscle layer, he reported. "No complications." "Good," Threnix said. "Continue at the same angle. The bone plate is coming up in 3 centimeters. Kyle moved the injector forward slowly, watching the hologram with complete focus. The bone appeared in his display, a thick plate of calcium and other minerals. This was the critical moment. If the calibration was wrong, the injector would bounce off the bone or worse, crack it. The tip of the injector touched the bone and then, smoothly, passed through it as if it was not there at all. Kyle felt relief flood through him. "Through the bone," he said, "approaching the heart of hearts now." "Vital signs stable," Amy reported from where she was monitoring the medical displays. "Heart rate normal, brain activity good." The injector moved deeper. Kyle could see the heart of hearts on the hologram now, pulsing with its slow, steady rhythm. It was smaller than he expected, about the size of a human fist, but it glowed with energy on the medical scanners. "Position looks good," Threnix said. "You may inject when ready." Kyle pressed the activation button. The blue liquid began to flow from the injector into the heart of hearts. He watched on the hologram as it spread through the organ, carried by the Lunari equivalent of blood vessels. "Treatment is dispersing," he said. 30% delivered, 40%, 50%. The monitors began to show changes. The heart of hearts was absorbing the treatment and distributing it throughout Vecrath's body. On the cellular level, invisible to the eye but visible on the scanners, the genetic markers were beginning to activate. 70%, 80%. "Complete," Kyle announced. He carefully withdrew the injector, watching the hologram to make sure he did not damage anything on the way out. When the injector was clear, he set it down and looked at the monitors. For a moment, nothing happened. The treatment was in Vecrath's system, but would it work? Then the displays began to change. "Cellular activity increasing," Threnix said, surprise in her translated voice. "The dormant stem cells are activating." This should not be possible. The genetic limiters should prevent this. "The treatment is breaking through the limiters," Kyle said, watching the data flow across the screens. His cells are starting to regenerate again. "It's working." Amy let out a small cheer from her position. Even Threnix made a sound that might have been excitement. Kyle allowed himself a brief smile. But then the alarms began to sound. Warning lights flashed red across all the monitors. The celebration ended immediately. "What's happening?" Amy asked, her voice sharp with concern. Threnix was already analyzing the data. "The regeneration is consuming too much energy. His brain is shutting down non-essential functions to compensate. If this continues, he will slip into a coma and die." Kyle's mind raced through possibilities. He had prepared for this scenario, hoped it would not happen, but prepared anyway. "We need to supplement his energy supply. Give his body the fuel it needs to complete the regeneration without shutting down." "How?" Threnix demanded. "If we flood his system with nutrients, his organs may not be able to process them fast enough. It could cause cascade failure." "Then we balance it carefully," Kyle said. He was already moving to another piece of equipment, a metabolic accelerator. "We increase his metabolism gradually, monitoring every organ system. The moment something goes wrong, we adjust." "That is extremely dangerous," Threnix warned. "So is doing nothing," Kyle shot back. "Amy, I need you to watch his kidney and liver functions. The moment either one spikes into the red zone, you tell me immediately." "Got it," Amy said, moving to the appropriate monitor. Kyle activated the metabolic accelerator. It was a coalition device designed to help patients recover from surgery faster by speeding up their natural healing. But Kyle was using it at a much higher intensity than normal, pushing Vecrath's metabolism to dangerous levels. The numbers on the monitors began to climb. Heart rate increased. Blood flow accelerated. Temperature rose. Every system in Vecrath's body was working harder than it ever had before. "Kidney function at 80% capacity," Amy reported. "Liver at 75%. "Acceptable," Kyle said. "Keep monitoring." The next hour was the hardest of Kyle's life. He stood at the controls, making tiny adjustments every few minutes. When the kidney started to overload, he reduced the metabolic rate slightly. When the liver showed stress, he adjusted the nutrient mixture. It was like trying to balance on a knife edge, one mistake away from disaster. Threnix worked beside him, her expertise in alien physiology proving invaluable. She caught problems Kyle would have missed, suggested solutions he had not considered. Despite her initial skepticism, she was fully committed now to saving Vecrath's life. Amy remained at her post, calling out numbers without pause. Her military training showed in her calm, clear voice even as the situation remained critical. In the observation window above, Captain Quarven and the other officers watched in silence. The entire ship seemed to be holding its breath. "Regeneration is at 60% completion," Threnix announced, "but his energy reserves are nearly depleted. I do not know if he can sustain this much longer." "He can," Kyle said firmly. "He's a warrior. He's fought through worse than this." As if in response to Kyle's words, the monitors began to stabilize. The wild fluctuations started to smooth out. The dangerous spike. 3 days passed slowly. Kyle barely left the medical bay except to sleep for a few hours in the room next door. He ate his meals while watching the monitors, checking Vecrath's vital signs every hour. Amy brought him coffee and food, making sure he took care of himself while he took care of his patient. Threnix came and went, running tests and analyzing the data. Each time she looked at the results, her mandibles clicked, and what Kyle had learned was amazement. The treatment was holding. The regeneration was stable. Vecrath's body was not rejecting the changes. On the morning of the third day, Kyle was sitting in a chair next to the bed, reading through medical journals on his tablet. He had barely slept the night before, too anxious about the possibility of complications. The room was quiet, except for the soft beeping of the monitors. Then one of the monitors chimed. Not an alarm, but a notification. Kyle's head snapped up and he looked at the display. Brain activity was increasing. Vecrath was waking up. Kyle stood quickly and moved closer to the bed. He watched as the old warrior's eyes began to move beneath his eyelids. Then slowly those amber eyes opened and focused on Kyle's face. "Welcome back, Commander," Kyle said softly. He could not keep the relief out of his voice. Vecrath blinked several times, as if adjusting to the light. He took a deep breath, and Kyle saw surprise register on his lupine features. The breath had filled his lungs more completely than it had in years. "Dr. Bennett," Vecrath said. His voice was stronger than before, clearer. "I am alive." Yes, sir. You made it through the procedure. How do you feel? The old Lunari raised one paw, flexing his fingers slowly. He stared at his own hand as if seeing it for the first time. I feel strange, lighter. My bones do not ache. My muscles do not burn. When did I last feel this way? He paused, thinking. 50 cycles ago, perhaps. Maybe more. Kyle pulled up a chair and sat down. The treatment worked better than I hoped. Your cellular regeneration is functioning properly again. According to my calculations, you've regained at least 50 years of life, maybe more. We won't know the exact number until we do long-term studies. Veckrath was silent for a long moment. He continued to stare at his paw, opening and closing his fingers. Then he looked at Kyle, and the young doctor was shocked to see tears forming in those amber eyes. 50 cycles, Veckrath whispered. That is longer than some species live their entire lives. You have given me time I never expected to have. Time I do not deserve. Everyone deserves a chance to live, Kyle said firmly. You're not a burden, Commander. You're a person with value. Never forget that. The old warrior closed his eyes. A single tear ran down his furred cheek. For so long I have felt useless. Too old to fight. Too tired to lead. Watching everyone I loved die while I continued on alone. I was ready to join them in whatever lies beyond. But now you have given me years. What am I to do with this unexpected gift? You teach, Kyle said. You pass on everything you know. You make sure the next generation learns from your experiences. That's what you do with time, Commander. You use it to make a difference. Veckrath opened his eyes again. You are young, but you speak with wisdom beyond your years. Very well. I accept this gift you have given me, and I will use it as you suggest. But first I must ask, what was the risk? How close did I come to dying on your table? Kyle hesitated, then decided honesty was best. Close. Very close. There were moments during the procedure when I thought we were going to lose you. Your body was consuming energy faster than we could provide it. We had to push your metabolism to dangerous levels. If we had been wrong by even a small margin, you would have died. And yet you persisted. That's what humans do, Kyle said with a slight smile. We're too stubborn to give up, even when we probably should. A sound came from Veckrath's throat, that deep rumbling that Kyle recognized as laughter. I begin to understand why the galaxy finds your species so unusual. You do not accept defeat gracefully. You fight against impossible odds, and sometimes impossibly you win. The door to the medical bay opened, and Amy entered, followed by Threnix and Captain Corvin. They had been waiting for news of Veckrath's awakening. Commander, Amy said, a huge smile on her face. It's good to see you awake, sir. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Veckrath greeted. I understand I have you to thank in part for this second chance. Dr. Bennett told me you spoke on my behalf. You saved my life once, sir. I was just returning the favor. Captain Corvin moved forward, his crystalline body pulsing with warm colors. Commander Veckrath, on behalf of the entire crew of the Distant Star, I welcome you back to the living. Your recovery is remarkable. Thank you, Captain, Veckrath said. He tried to sit up, and both Kyle and Threnix moved to help him. With support, the old warrior managed to prop himself up against the raised portion of the bed. I feel stronger than I have in many cycles. It is a strange sensation. Threnix examined him with her large insect eyes. Your vital signs are excellent, Commander. All organ systems are functioning at levels we would expect from a Lunari in middle age, not an elder. This is unprecedented in Coalition medical history. Dr. Bennett has worked a miracle, Veckrath said. Or perhaps his human stubbornness has simply refused to accept what we thought was impossible. Either way, I am grateful. Kyle shifted uncomfortably with all the attention. I just did my job, and I had a lot of help. Threnix's knowledge of Lunari physiology was crucial. Without her, I would have killed you for sure. Nevertheless, Captain Corvin said, what you have accomplished here will have far-reaching effects. Other species will want to know if this treatment can be adapted for them. You may have opened a new field of medical science. The reality of that statement settled over Kyle. He had been so focused on saving Vekrath that he had not thought about the larger implications. If the treatment could be modified for other species, how many lives might be saved? How many elders who had accepted death might be given more time? "I would like to make a request, Captain," Vekrath said, his voice carrying the authority of a military commander despite his recent ordeal. "I wish to remain aboard the Distant Star. I wish to serve as a combat advisor and to work with Dr. Bennett to document this treatment. If it can help others, then my extended life will have purpose beyond merely existing." Corvin's colors shifted to thoughtful patterns. "An interesting proposal. Our tactical division would certainly benefit from your centuries of experience, and having a long-term study subject for this treatment would be valuable." "Very well, Commander. I approve your request. You are officially assigned to the Distant Star as a senior tactical advisor." Vekrath bowed his head in gratitude. "Thank you, Captain. I will not disappoint you." "And Dr. Bennett," Corvin continued, "I am promoting you to senior medical officer, with authority equal to Threnix. Your work here has proven your capability. The ship needs your innovative thinking." Kyle felt his jaw drop. "Sir, I'm only 28. I've been a doctor for just 4 years." "Age is not the measure of ability," Corvin replied. "You saved a life that every other doctor in the Coalition had given up on. That deserves recognition. Do you accept?" Kyle looked at Threnix, worried she might be offended by having to share authority. But the insect doctor clicked her mandibles in what he now knew was approval. "You have earned this, Dr. Bennett," Threnix said, "and I look forward to continuing our collaboration. Together we may accomplish things neither of us could do alone." "Then I accept," Kyle said. "Thank you, Captain." Amy was grinning so wide her face looked like it might split. "This calls for a celebration. As soon as the commander is cleared to leave the medical bay, we're having a party in the crew lounge." "A party?" Vekrath's ears perked up with interest. "I have not attended a celebration in many years. What do humans do at parties?" "We eat. Too much food, drink too much alcohol, and tell stories," Amy said. "Sometimes we dance, but I warn you, human dancing is probably weird by Lunari standards." "It sounds wonderful," Vekrath said, and there was genuine happiness in his voice. "I look forward to it. But first, Dr. Bennett, I believe I owe you something. You asked me to teach you the old songs. I think it is time I began." Kyle pulled his chair closer. "Now? You just woke up. You should rest." "I have rested for 3 days," Vekrath said, "and I find I am eager to share what I know before another moment passes. The songs are simple, but they carry the history of my people. Each one tells a story of our past." The old warrior began to sing. His voice was rough at first, rusty from disuse, but it gained strength as he continued. The language was alien, full of growls and howls that Kyle's human throat could never reproduce properly, but the melody was beautiful, haunting, and ancient. When Vekrath finished, the room was silent. Even Captain Corvin, who had no ears in the traditional sense, seemed moved by the performance. "That was the song of the first pack," Vekrath explained. "It tells of how the Lunari evolved from simple hunters to a spacefaring civilization. Every Lunari child once learned this song, but now so few remember it. I will teach it to you, Dr. Bennett, if you wish to learn." "I would be honored," Kyle said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I have to warn you, my singing voice is terrible." "Then you will sound like a dying Vargal beast," Vekrath said with amusement. "But that does not matter. What matters is that someone, besides me, knows the words, someone who will remember even after I am truly gone. You're not going a 6 months past like a dream." Kyle stood in the conference hall of Coalition Medical Station Gamma, looking out at hundreds of faces from dozens of different species. Some had faces he recognized as mammalian. Others were insect-like, crystalline, or completely alien. All of them were medical professionals, and all of them had come to hear about his work. His hands were sweating. Public speaking had never been his strength. But beside him sat 2 people who gave him courage. Kor sat to his right, looking healthier than anyone had thought possible. Threnix sat to his left, her mandibles clicking with what he now knew was pride. Amy stood backstage, giving him a thumbs up. She had taken leave from her tactical duties to be here for this moment. "Are you ready?" Threnix asked quietly. Kyle took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be. Let's do this." The lights dimmed and a spotlight focused on the stage. Kyle stood and walked to the podium. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the title of his presentation in a dozen languages. "Good morning," Kyle began. His voice was amplified throughout the huge hall. "My name is Dr. Kyle Bennett, and I'm here to talk about something that everyone said was impossible. I'm here to talk about how we gave a dying warrior 50 more years of life." The audience leaned forward, paying full attention. Kyle activated the screen behind him, showing medical charts and genetic sequences. "The lunary species has a natural lifespan of approximately 300 cycles," Kyle explained. "Their bodies regenerate damage efficiently, but this regeneration is controlled by genetic limiters. When those limiters reach their endpoint, regeneration stops and the body begins to fail. Coalition medical science has always accepted this as an unchangeable fact." He paused, letting that sink in. "But humans are relatively new to space. We don't have centuries of established medical tradition telling us what's impossible. So when I met Commander Veckrath and learned he was dying, I didn't think about what was impossible. I thought about what I could try." A doctor from the Zentari Collective raised a crystalline hand. Kyle nodded for the question. "Dr. Bennett," the Zentari said, "your initial success rate was concerning. Of 13 total patients treated, 5 died during or shortly after the procedure. How do you justify these deaths?" Kyle had known this question would come. He had prepared for it, but before he could answer, Kor stood up. The old Lunari's presence commanded immediate attention throughout the hall. "I will answer that question," Kor said, his deep voice filling the space. "Before this treatment existed, all 13 of those patients faced certain death within days or weeks. 8 now live who would have died. 5 died, yes, but they died trying to survive rather than simply waiting for the end. As a warrior, I can tell you there is honor in fighting for life, even if the fight is lost." The Zentari doctor seemed to consider this. "But the risk is so high." "The risk of doing nothing was 100% fatal," Kor replied. "Dr. Bennett's treatment gave us a chance. For 8 of us, that chance was enough. For 5, it was not. But would you rather those 8 died without trying? Would you rather they accepted their fate without hope?" Silence filled the hall. Then slowly, doctors throughout the audience began making gestures of agreement in their various ways. Kor continued speaking. "I was ready to die 6 months ago. I had accepted my death. But this young human looked at me and refused to accept what I accepted. He fought for my life when I would not fight for it myself. And because of him, I have taught 17 young Lunari the combat arts that would have died with me. I have recorded 300 songs that existed only in my memory. I have shared tactical knowledge from wars fought centuries ago. This is what extended life means. Not just breathing for more years, but having time to pass on what matters." The old warrior turned to look at Kyle. "Humanity joined the coalition only 30 years ago. You are the youngest species in our alliance, but you bring something that we older species sometimes forget. You bring hope. You bring the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. You bring the belief that every life matters and deserves to be saved. That is the true gift of Dr. Bennett's work. Not just a medical procedure, but a reminder of what medicine should be about." Kor sat down and the entire hall erupted in applause. Clicks, whistles, chirps, and other sounds of approval from dozens of species filled the air. Kyle felt his throat tighten with emotion. When the noise died down, Kyle continued his presentation. He showed detailed genetic sequences, explained the treatment process, discussed the complications they had faced and how they had overcome them. Threnix added her own expertise, explaining how coalition technology had been combined with human medical knowledge. By the end of the 2-hour presentation, 5 different research institutions had approached Kyle with partnership offers. The Coalition Medical Board had formally approved expanded clinical trials, and dozens of doctors had lined up to ask questions and discuss possibilities. Later that evening, Kyle, Amy, Kor, and Threnix sat in one of the station's observation lounges. Through the massive windows they could see ships from 100 worlds, all docked at this neutral meeting place in space. "I still can't believe it," Kyle said, staring at his tablet which was full of messages from medical professionals across the galaxy. 6 months ago I was just trying to save one patient. Now we're talking about changing medicine for multiple species. "You started a revolution," Amy said, raising her glass. Not with weapons or politics, but with compassion and stubbornness. That's very human of you. Threnix clicked her mandibles in amusement. When I first met Dr. Bennett, I thought his approach was foolishly optimistic. I have learned much from working with him. Human medicine may be less advanced in some ways, but humans see possibilities where we see limitations. That perspective is valuable. To partnerships that cross the stars, Amy said, holding up her glass higher. To old warriors getting second chances. To stubborn doctors who don't know when to quit. And to friendships that prove we're all better together. They clinked their various drinking containers together. Kyle felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the alcohol. These were his friends, his team. His family, even though they came from different worlds. You know, Kor said thoughtfully. When I was young, my pack leader told me something I did not understand at the time. He said that a warrior's greatest achievement is not battles won, but lives touched. I spent 300 years thinking glory came from combat, but now, given this unexpected time, I finally understand what he meant. He looked at Kyle with those amber eyes that now shone with health and vitality. You gave me more than extended life, Kyle. You gave me purpose. You reminded me that my experiences have value, that my knowledge should be shared, that I still have contributions to make. For that, I will be grateful for however many years remain to me. Kyle shook his head. You gave me something too, Kor. You taught me that the most important battles aren't always fought with weapons. Sometimes they're fought in medical bays with determination and hope. You taught me that saving one life can create ripples that spread farther than we can imagine. The old songs will survive now. Kor said softly. The young ones are learning. 3 Lunari students have come to me in the past month, wanting to learn the traditional ways. They heard about my recovery and sought me out. Without you, that knowledge would have died. The songs would have been lost forever. That's the real victory, Kyle agreed. Not just the medical achievement, but what it enables. Time for teaching. Time for sharing. Time for making the galaxy a better place. A chime sounded on Kyle's tablet. He glanced at it and his eyes widened. There's a message here from the Virillian Council. They have an engineer who is past her species' normal lifespan. Her family heard about our work and they're asking if we can help. Threnix leaned over to look at the message. Virillian physiology is quite different from Lunari. The treatment would need significant modification. But it's possible? Kyle asked. With your human creativity and my knowledge of coalition biology, perhaps it would be another challenge, another risk. Kyle looked at his friends. Amy was grinning, already knowing what his answer would be. Kor nodded with approval. Even Threnix seemed eager to tackle this new problem. Then let's do it, Kyle said. Let's see if we can help one more person. Then another after that. We've proven it can be done. Now we need to prove it can be done again. 3 months later, Kyle stood in a medical bay on the far side of the sector. The Virillian engineer, whose name was approximately pronounced as Chivalry, lay on the biobed. Her species looked vaguely insect-like but with crystalline elements. She was 200 cycles old, ancient for her kind. Kyle had spent weeks studying Virillian biology, adapting the treatment, running simulations. Kor had come with him as a consultant, sharing his experience as a patient. Threnix had reviewed every calculation, every modification. Now came the moment of truth. Again. Are you ready? Kyle asked Chivalry. The old engineer's voice came through the translator as a soft chime. I am ready, Dr. Bennett. My family believes in you. I believe in you. Do your work. Kyle activated the modified treatment and began the procedure. It was different from Kor's operation in many ways, but to